if you have any interest, and I say any interest in being more effective online. Guys, today's guest, her name's Chelsea Peitz. She's going to be with us here in just a minute. Hold tight. So the big question is this: how do those of us in the real estate industry with crazy amounts of ambition, how do we think bigger than the building of our own empires? How do we simultaneously seek success and significance, income and impact? My name is Justin Stoddard, and this is the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. Again, welcome back to the show, guys. Excited to have you here. More excited about today's guest. Those of you that have any connection to the real estate industry will recognize this face and this name. She's an absolute baller when it comes to delivering high value about being truly effective online. Chelsea, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. I've been waiting for this for a while. I'm looking forward to it. I love chatting about being on social media and doing it in a very human way that creates a powerful personal brand. It's going to attract and convert your ideal customer and create relationships. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I love it. Every time I first got introduced to you years ago, and I started watching your content, I was like, oh my goodness, she's so real, right? And I think that's one of the things that people maybe miss out on. And let me kind of frame this inside of what the goal of today's episode is, right? I think a lot of people, especially with the help of virtual teams and other places, have gotten very focused on becoming efficient online. Let me just outsource this, right? I'll have my content everywhere. I'll do a podcast. I'll chop it up. And I don't actually have to be there because other people are going to do it for me, right? And I think, in my opinion, and I believe everything that I've watched of you, of yours, would put us on the same page, which is social media is not a broadcasting tool per se. It's a connection and a conversation tool at the core when done correctly. Would you agree with that, Chelsea?
I would agree with that. I mean, it really is both. And I think the mindset needs to be around how do you use it to be more human through technology, especially in a world where we were all forced online, whether we wanted to be online or not in the last 2 years. And while we are going back to more in-person connections and meetings, which is wonderful, this is quite convenient and it's never going back to the way it was. And so we now are faced with how do we really connect with other human beings and create a level of trust through technology, which I will tell you, as growing up and as an adult that had an actual career in real estate before social media existed, if you would have told me that I'd be building trust through technology and talking to my phone, I probably would have said that sounds wild. So I'm really, really fascinated about how we can help the industry show up as human beings that happen to sell real estate and not realtors that happen to be human beings. And part of that is exactly what you said. How are you showing up in a digital environment in ways that you would never show up in a physical one? And that kind of comes to that outsourcing point that you were talking about. So I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Let me ask this kind of first question, Chelsea. What does success online really look like? Right? Oftentimes we measure it in views and impressions, and of course, if we're doing any sort of ads, like that's kind of the lingo. But in your opinion, what does success online? What should it look like? What are the metrics we should actually be watching?
Mm-hmm. So I have this phrase that I say all the time that is views don't equal value. And this really came about over the last, I would say, 18 months or so. And certainly you've probably noticed a shift on social media landscapes where it's very focused on short form vertical video, whether you call it TikTok or Reels or anything in between. That's something that, we thought maybe this is a trend and now it's become a new normal. And with that, came this this watching of not only trends, views, followers. A lot of people say, gosh, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? There's a lot of discouragement happening because of metrics. Now, I will absolutely tell you that I believe in metrics and things that are measurable, and we need to track that. We live in a metric-focused world. How many people have I talked to? How many transactions do I have in the pipeline? What is my weight on the scale? Whatever your measures are. So for me, I found that a lot of people were measuring things that were easy to measure and may not be impactful on your business or your mental health, which I think is a very important part of your business. So when I say views don't equal value, what's easy to measure? Views, followers, likes. That's easy to measure. And that kind of has been the standard for what we've looked at and what do we measure in social media. Is there watch time? Absolutely. So there are different aspects on the scale of measurement. What I want to encourage people who are listening and watching this is to think about all of the amazing immeasurable things that are happening when another human being is consuming your content and connecting with it. Because what's really hard to measure is an aha moment. Very difficult to measure trust. Almost impossible unless that person reaches out and gives you a metric and says, Justin, I just watched your video. It was so helpful. Thank you. Sometimes that happens, and a lot of time it's not, especially with how social media is changing. We are in a world now of not just seeing people we choose to follow. I might follow you and I'll see your content, but I see a lot of people I don't know because these platforms want to become Google. They want to become a search engine. So I'm not going to engage in the same manner with someone I don't know yet, and it's going to take more times for me to connect with them versus you who I already chose to follow. So engagement is changing, consumption patterns are changing, and it's very important to know that there are a lot of things that are easy to measure. Maybe you can make up your own metrics. Maybe your metrics are, I'm going to commit for 10 minutes a day to write down content ideas. I'm going to commit to once a week making 4 short videos. I'm going to post 3 times a week, whatever your metric is, because you can control that. So the measure of success, in my opinion, isn't a specific metric. And if I had to put something that you could measure, it would be simply how many conversations that you are having, because those conversations are going to be leading to conversions. And if we're looking at it from an algorithmic perspective, it's absolutely impacting the algorithm in your favor when you're talking to people through comments and DMs.
Boy, I could not agree more. One of my key mentors has taught me that conversion, right, which all of us are trying to convert people into our world, right, whatever products or services we offer to people, even in converting them into relationships with us, conversion comes from conversations, right? And I get that in order to be in conversation with people, you have to have their attention. But I agree with you. I think oftentimes social media platforms, as I mentioned before, are very much broadcast tools, and we forget the fact that they can actually be conversation tools as well, right? We connected through a conversation that started on Instagram, right? It wasn't because you'd seen my content. I'd seen yours. So you had my attention. And then from that led to a conversation, which now you could say it's a conversion onto the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. So I love that. I think that's important for everybody to recognize. I actually want to pull in another example is that I just started doing something different with my fitness. Now you sparked this idea because you talked about the stuff that we measure, like for example, our weight. Now I'm a middle-aged guy. I've got 6 kiddos. Now, I didn't give birth to them. My wife did. She gets all the credit for that, right? But I will say that I've always prided myself on being fairly fit, and it's getting harder and harder, like the longer I'm on, right?
Same.
and I'm watching this scale for years, and I can't get it to move much. And I just started, instead of measuring that lag measure, right? I started to now measure like calorie intake. Now I'm sure there's all kinds of fitness gurus that will say, be careful, this, do that, whatever. But for me, it's something that I can control today. Very similar to what you said, Chelsea, which is focus on some metric that is meaningful to you of how many conversations am I going to be in? And then watch how the results come from that, as opposed to just watching the results of views and clicks and all these things that may not even be the right measurement to be watching. That actually go backwards and say, what are some lead measures that I can influence today that will then turn into great lag measures down the road? Any thoughts on that?
I agree with that. 2 things that I would want to say. One, I'm the same, where I know that I perform better for me in business, me as a partner, me as a mom, when I move my body and make healthy decisions. And one of the ways that I've decided to measure that, again, not the scale, because that was getting frustrating for me, I measure how many days a week do I move my body. And I don't have an expectation. There's not like necessarily a formula. I'm not saying that I have to go to be on cardio for 60 minutes and da, da, da. You can get that specific. For me, that was my measurement, and those little things built on each other. So I do believe that there are so many things that we can measure that matter to us, our mental health, our business health, etc. I also want to mention that you said something that made me think about doing sort of the unscalable thing, which is the human thing, right? We can't scale ourselves. We can scale parts of our business and absolutely have efficiencies and automations And what's really sort of magical about the socials, because 22 years ago when I got my real estate license, we didn't have that. You had to actually answer the phone if I wanted to talk to you, or I had to see you in person or mail you something with a stamp. Now I can connect with you and I don't even have to be, quote, friends or a follower. I can send you a message totally for free, which is such an incredible way to connect with people
It's amazing.
as long as we're using it in the human way. But the piece that's really, really impactful, I think, is the unscalability of being able to send someone a message that literally has their name in it that you had to make, and you took actually 30 seconds out of your very busy day to not automate sending those types of messages. And boy, do I wish that when I had, and I did do this, but like I miss it now. There is such a beautiful thing in having a community of people that is manageable. You know, so many people want to say, oh, I only have 200 followers. Only those are 200 people, right? Or how do I get to 20,000? Are you sure you want or need 20,000? Because the magic that happens when you're talking to people in a place where they're already paying attention is really amazing, to be able to do that and do it unscalable and send 3 messages a day or 3 video messages, or, hey, Justin, congratulations. I just saw your kiddos went back to school. That's awesome. Hope you have a great week, right? You're just talking to people and you're connecting with them, but they know that you made that for them. And I know it's like, oh, that's the last thing I want to do is to spend 1 minute a day making videos or doing unscalable things. But that's really where you're going to build that relationship and that attention, if you will, in a very them-focused, positive experience with your brand. That's what we want. We want people to experience our brand in a lens that empowers them and makes them feel good. And that's really hard to do. I mean, other than outside of that or doing something nice for someone, that's not usually going to happen with your post in the feed necessarily. So I think doing unscalable things and looking at these as communication platforms where we can be connecting and we can be compassionate, we can be empathetic, and we can be inspiring and motivating is a really powerful sales tool that you can't always track the ROI. It's like the ROI of like your dog, right? There's definitely one there, but I can't quantify it. And that's the frustrating part in the metrics world. We want to quantify all the things. I want X amount of videos to yield X amount of transactions in X amount of time. And there is no metric because we're not dealing with metrics. We're dealing with humans. That's the great part about it.
There's I think we have a friend in common, Ethan Butte of Bomb Bomb.
Yes, I love their team and their books. Yes.
So good. Anyway, that whole conversation, right, around, and again, going back to the kind of the theme of this show, is that like there are some great tools out there and some great systems, much of which I use to be efficient online. If we just get caught up in being efficient, what ends up happening is we miss the whole point of it. We actually want to be effective, right? We actually want to create connections, conversations, and be able to actually then be able to contribute to people's lives in bigger and better ways. What do you think keeps people, Chelsea, from some of the things that we've talked about? Is it the peer pressure of I need to have so many views and followers? I know for me what's kept me from, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. You deal with a lot more people in this space than I do. But what's holding people back, whether from being online, period, or from being online in a really effective way?
Absolutely. So many limiting beliefs. You could say stories that we tell ourselves, and many of these stories come from possibly how you grew up or how we were raised. And some of those, the number one always is, I just don't really love seeing my recorded self. And I say recorded self because our recorded self often does look a little bit different to us than when we're looking in the mirror. And so that's where our brain's kind of like, wait a minute, is that really me? Or you might be building your camera confidence. And as you're building it, it may seem that you don't appear as yourself and your warmth isn't shining through because you're really thinking about how to present. And so that can be uncomfortable too. Your voice, right? Yes, your voice does sound different to you inside of your head than it does, but we all hear it this way when you're talking.
Like you. And we still like you.
Yes. So, if we had a pill for that, I mean, I'd be retired. If I could say, here, take this pill and you'll be, love to be on camera and you'll use it all the time and go for it. But, some of the other limiting beliefs that I talk a lot about is, this idea of, well, is that professional? Well, I don't know that I want to be on TikTok making videos because I don't know that, is that professional? How does that position me as an expert in maybe the luxury space or wherever space you are? My clients aren't there. A limiting belief or a story around that. And what I say to that is, who here wants to work with somebody who has integrity? All the hands go up. Who wants to work with somebody with empathy, with compassion? Who wants to build trust? Every hand goes up. Well, those are uniquely human. So the concept that human is professional, the very thing that we desire in working with someone and building trust is only human. So again, you're showing up digitally differently than you would physically. And what I mean by that is, if I'm not a fan of seeing my recorded self and I'm letting that hold me back, it would be like you and I meeting at a Starbucks and me asking you a question, and all of a sudden you're diving under the table at Starbucks and I'm looking around like, what's happening? And you're talking from under the table. And I'm like, Justin, are you okay down there? And you're like, you know what? I just don't want you to look at me while I'm talking to you. We would never do that, right? Or you talk about outsourcing everything with social media. Of course, there are many things you can outsource. You can't outsource the thing that you've got to do. Like, you had to show up today, Justin. You had to interview. And so that would be like me sending my neighbor to my kiddo's soccer game this weekend. How would my kid feel if they looked over and didn't see me? And I'm like, oh, I'm just outsourcing myself for the day so I can be efficient. So there's a lot of things we're doing in a digital world that we would not do in a physical. So I just would consistently say it's time for you to ask yourself, what would I do in the physical world? If you're going to look at somebody when you talk to them, then turn your Zoom camera on. You're going to be making camera videos because it's the most human way to communicate. And another limiting belief is, well, I just don't want it to be about me. I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of egotistical. What if people think I'm bragging? What if I'm in every one of my photos? Does that say something about me? And to that, again, I'm going to say, let's talk about physical, right? In the world of physical, the most human way to communicate is eye to eye, face to face, where we're talking to each other, right? And so being on camera, being in your content has nothing to do with ego or fame. Yes, there are people that brag. That's not what we're talking about. It has everything to do with showing up and being a human. And creating those neural pathways where I am seeing you again and again and again and creating familiarity, which leads to trust. And we think of trust as this thing of like, oh my gosh, would I trust this person to, come to my house and house sit? No, we're talking about familiarity and our brain saying, oh, I know that person. I recognize that person. And it's not like we have built this huge level of trust. We're saying that we know you now, and that provides a baseline for the trust where your brain is going to take a shortcut and say, oh yeah, I know that person. That person's top of mind. Let me call that person. And you don't realize that it's because you've built that trust by consistently showing up and showing this in the content.
I think the stories we tell ourselves, right, are so interesting. Going back to your example of people talking themselves out of doing content. We have a friend in common, Glenda Baker, who now has 800 and some odd thousand followers on TikTok.
Yes.
I get to spend an hour a week with her in a mastermind, and it's so interesting to hear her retrospectively talk about being in the same shoes that so many agents are in right now. And of course, she did her videos really, really well. She did them at a very high level, but then she just decided to be superhuman, whether it was cuss, whether it was kind of tease herself about her Southern drawl. Like, it didn't matter. She was who she was, and the world fell in love with Glenda Baker, right? And not everybody has that exact charm, but I do think that it creates a microcosm for all of us to recognize the fact that the only thing that is holding us back is our unwillingness to be bad at first, is to not be great at first. And I think Jim Rohn said, you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. I remember a mentor of mine said, your first 100 videos are not for you. They're not for your audience. So don't worry about it. They're for you to figure out what you want to talk about, to just get comfortable in your own skin, being human, being like, you know what, world, this is who I am. And here's what I like to talk about. And the reality is you're going to push some people away. And the reality is you're going to attract some people that are like, hey, that's my guy. That's my gal. So I love what you've said there about people just kind of taking steps forward being okay with hearing their own voice, being okay seeing their own face. These things are all okay. And the only person who might not love it at first is probably going to be you, right? And that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Such good stuff. Chelsea, would you, if we were to give some kind of tactical steps for people that are wanting to get better online? I believe that everybody that's watching this, observing this, listening to the podcast has some online presence, right? They're not afraid to be here, but all of us want to be better, right? All of us want to be a little bit more like Chelsea. I don't say that to kiss up, but I am saying that you're very good. You're very human, and you've really become an authority figure in our industry and others as to how to get better online. If you could kind of coach us almost as if you were speaking to an individual here.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would say today, tomorrow? What would you do?
Two tips. Yeah, two tips. One, my favorite platform is Instagram, and that's where I spend the majority of my time. Yes, I'm on all the platforms, but if you do really want to build your camera confidence and not just delivering a message, actually feeling like you are showing up as yourself, which I did not show up as myself, as you said, for hundreds of videos. It was one of those things that sort of accidentally happened. And I kind of just started relaxing and I got used to myself. And so like Glenda, you just talked about, who is very much her own perspective and her own unique Glenda. And that's what we love about her. So that didn't happen for me right away. But I will say Instagram stories and doing daily Instagram stories absolutely is going to help you get comfortable in camera. It's going to help you get comfortable with your recorded self. And if you're doing something every day, it's just a couple seconds a day. But if you're doing something every day, eventually you're going to start relaxing and you're going to start seeing, yourself. Another tip for getting comfortable on camera is instead of posting something to the world, just send it to one person. And the beautiful thing about that is when I send Glenda a happy birthday message and it's a video, I'm not thinking about me. I'm thinking about Glenda and I'm like smiling and I'm like, Glenda, I'm so stoked. It's your birthday. I'm thinking about you. I miss you. I'm giving you a big virtual hug right now. And what's really cool about that is when you're not thinking about like 3 tips for X, Y, and Z, you watch that back and you're like, oh, that sounds like me. That looks like me. And so it's going to help you get more comfortable because those videos, you forget that you're the one on the video, right? It's a little bit harder because immediately we give ourselves feedback when we're giving our 3 tips for X, Y, and Z. And so that'll help you sort of ease into it. My next tip is a bit more advanced. This is something that I am actively and will continue to actively work on because it is not something that comes easy to me. And it is in the realm of copywriting. I know you're thinking, oh, wait, they want us to get on video and now I got to be a copywriter? No, you just start by making some content, and that might be a whole year of you just committing to do that. And when you're comfortable, when you're ready to level up, the copy is so important because we are in a world of very short attention spans. And very well-paid advertisers and copywriters are paid for that reason because, big companies know, hey, we need to capture attention. We need to tell people why they're going to want to watch this. And so one of the things that I'm personally working on and would encourage anyone to be working on for especially short form video, whether it's TikTok shorts, etc., is that first couple of seconds, that hook. You might have heard somebody say that before. There's a hook in the first couple of seconds where you're grabbing attention and maybe you're asking a question. You're utilizing the word you instead of I. So you might say something like, do you want to know what $1 million buys you in Atlanta? Or something along those lines. So starting with that. Then you can even start going farther. Once you've really gotten comfortable with that hook and asking a question using the word you, then the next thing is, and you can Google all these online. There are many, many, many people that have shared how to formulate these hooks, but it might be something about, let me position this with what does, the client need or want? And then you've got a formula where you're saying, here's the problem. I'm going to give you the solution. And now I'm going to go through step 1, 2, and 3. So that is advanced. Do not think about all of that in the beginning. Just start and get comfortable. And then I would say the baby stepping into grabbing attention to hook people in, ask a question in the first sentence and use the word you.
Boy, I love that, Chelsea, because it really is common for people to want to give almost a bio, like, hello, this is Laura Smith with XYZ Realty,
Yeah.
based out of Phoenix, Arizona, been licensed for 4 years. You've lost people, right? And
Mhm.
you have a 100% chance of losing people if it takes too long for you to actually say what I'm like. They aren't watching the video to learn what you did for a living, right?
Mhm.
That's a kind of down the road. They're going to want to hear, now, who is this person? But yeah, that hook is so critical. So critical. I love that. Chelsea, I want to give everybody a chance who's not already following you, which I think is probably about everybody, but let's direct them to where you would want them to go for them to get more resources. I know you not only give away so much value just in how you show up online, just demonstrating how it should be done, but also you give away a lot of great tips in your general marketing. But there's also some things that people can get additional access to, right? Would you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the best place to connect with me, like I said, I'm on all the socials. You can find me on my website. It's just chelseapeitz.com. The best place to go is Instagram, because Instagram is going to give you a behind the scenes into who I really am. And I love being able to share that with people. It's also going to have a clickable link in the bio. And if you are a real estate professional who's been thinking, I really need to get a little bit more familiar with Instagram, but I'm a little bit nervous, then you're going to want to go to my profile, follow me, and click the link in the bio, because I have a totally free Instagram course specifically for real estate that is going to help you know what account to use, how to set it up, how to optimize it, and many other things as well. So definitely grab that. There's free downloads and checklists as well. And then if you are looking for more in-depth coaching on how to get on video and how to show up in a way that is human and relatable in your personality-driven brand, I do have a 5-week live course that is ongoing 4 times a year called Real Estate Content Accelerator with my co-coach, Giselle Ugardi. And you can also click there and find out information about those start dates, which actually is next week.
How cool is that? What great timing for those
Yeah.
of you that are interested in really taking that next step in your Instagram world, in your social media world. What a great place to learn from one of the foremost experts. So grateful for you, Chelsea. I've got one more question for you. One thing that I always promise to let people know is where they can get more access to great content like this. We have a free Facebook group called Successful Real Estate Agents. I'll put it up here on the screen if you're interested in that. We really focus on helping you grow your warm market business. And what Chelsea's talking about here is really specifically how to build relationships, right? Not just how to generate leads. There's plenty of ways you can do that. How to generate legitimate relationships and how to do that online. Chelsea has obviously given us an entire tutorial on how to do that. So appreciate it very much. My final question to you, Chelsea, is this. You are a big thinker. You've graced some of the largest stages, if not the largest stages in our industry. I'd love to hear from you. What does Chelsea Peitz continue to do to be a big thinker, to continue to expand your possibilities? What does it look like for you?
It's the people you surround yourself with, truly. Maybe that is the Facebook group and community here. Maybe that is joining a group, a mastermind of people outside of your industry or inside of your industry. I think when you are consistently aligning yourself with and around and exposing yourself to people that you admire and can mentor you, and you can create these relationships, it gives me the boost to say, I can do this. I want to do this. And here are some incredible people that I can collaborate with. And so that has been kept me going. Now it's evolved over the years. 8 years ago, it was me and 4 people that I met on Snapchat that happened to be in real estate. And we would get together once a year. We would goal plan and talk about social media. That turned into 25. Then that turned into, different conferences. And now it looks similar, but also very different, where I personally am in a mastermind that I have paid for. And I do my own coaching and get coached. And so that is what I do. And I surround myself specifically with people that I know are going to push me to reach that next step. And sometimes it's scary and exhilarating. And always it ends up helping me to reach those goals and making really incredible connections and relationships, which is ultimately what my goal is in life.
I love it. I love it. You can always learn something there's always somebody out there that can teach us, right? And the moment that we think we've got it figured out is when we stop growing. And I love hearing from you, Chelsea, that you also are part of masterminds, get coach, all of that. It's just such validation as to how to accelerate your growth. That's how I see coaching. It's a growth accelerator. And I appreciate you helping us not only think bigger today, but also helping us to accelerate our growth. So appreciative of you. Thank you so much. And for everybody listening here today, my final request is this: 3 simple words. You know what they are. Go think bigger. Talk to you soon. If you enjoyed this episode, then I have a very special invitation for you. I have created a private Facebook community called Successful Real Estate Agents, where the focus is going beyond success, having both a successful business and a significant life. If you're not yet a member, go sign up now.